Polite inquiries, Bell Reeve, day one. Simon says, what was the point in picking Overton and Lawrence for the tour if they're not even playing now? Surely they're either good enough to play or they shouldn't be in the squad. Matt Roller, why did you choose them?
Yeah, it's a classic, isn't it? You're always a better player when you're not in a team. I reckon Craig Overton coming on second change would have taken 5 for 30. Dan Lawrence would have rattled off a ton already within 50 overs of England bowling.
General, I'm not really sure why they took Craig Overton anyway, being that kind of bowler was very well represented in England's side, where Saqib Mahmood would have made a lot more sense, or maybe a different bowler altogether. But yeah, I also understand the frustration of thinking at this point you might as well throw everyone in, but I don't think it would have changed much. Samrat says, how can a team lose its grip on the match after reducing the opposition 12 for 3? You're going to lose your mind, Samrat, when you hear about Headingley in 2019.
Yeah, I think you're allowed to give a bit of credit to Australia as well. I think, Marner's played pretty well, pretty weird innings. One of the strangest, I don't know if we'll get onto his dismissal, but one of the weirder 44s I think you'll see. But yeah, Head and Green also played really well, I thought. England, yes, bowled pretty badly. The change bowlers were not great. Wokes is still a pretty bad pick away from home, as I think we've always known. I think that's probably, accepted wisdom by now. But yeah, I don't think you can entirely blame all of this on England. Sure, they let it get away from them, and they have let it get away from them at various points in the series. But yeah, Head played a really good counter-attacking innings, and Green and Marnus both played pretty well as well.
It's worth noting that the pink ball went a little bit soft and the wicket didn't seem to react as much again. In fact, I'm going to make this point because there's probably not a question about it, and hopefully there's not because I'm going to preempt it here. Again, wickets fell at the start of the day with a new ball in the day-night test, not in the twilight session when everyone moans. Weird that. The third man says, is Travis Head a polished version of Rishabh Pant? I'm not sure Travis Head is that much more polished than Rishabh Pant, is he? They're similar kinds of players. I think that Rishabh Pant's probably a much more rounded version of Travis Head. Can probably play in a lot more different environments. Travis Head's still got to be tested a lot more than he has, but I think he's played really well this series. I don't think England's bowled at all well to him, but that's not his fault. He didn't ask for that. Keshav says, what's your take on Sam? I'm assuming you mean Billings. I love that you're on first name basis with him, Keshav, as a red ball player. Do you see any future for him as a full-time keeper for England in Test, or is he going to go the folks' way too and won't be looked at once Bairstow and Butler return? First of all, he's at best like the fourth choice wicketkeeper. So I don't know if he makes 283. There's a chance he might jump a bunch of people in the queue. But realistically, Folks is ahead of him. Bairstow is probably ahead of him, and Butler currently has the job. So Billings would have to play a spectacular game, and not just with his mouth, but also with the gloves and the bat to change everyone's mind. But I don't see him as a long-term Test player, but only because there's so many other options.
I think England have upgraded in terms of keeping Chat 2 tests in a row, haven't they? They started with Butler at the, for the first 3.5 tests of the series. Then Pope was a little louder and a little chirpier in the second innings at the SCG, and then today Billings was letting everyone know who's on debut. It's fair to say.
Oz Horse, apart from Robinson's and Broad's opening spell, is that the worst England bowling effort of the series? Oh, I like that, Roller.
It's been a few pretty bad ones.
Jack Leach loves that question, by the way.
Yeah, I think I'm thinking back to Robinson bowling offies wearing sunnies and Milan bowling out a few leg breaks and thinking at least Wood was charging in. It wasn't great, but yeah, as I said earlier, I think Australia batted pretty well with a good counter attack. The ball went soft. I think it wasn't ideal, and you do look at the selection as well. Robinson only bowling, I think, 1 over after the first interval is not great in terms of his fitness, which has been a bit of an issue throughout this tour. But yeah, I think there's been some pretty bad ones as well.
Man from the Seven Hills, surely the backlash against the umpires is uncalled for. If the world's #1 Test batter can slip when there is no rain, well, on the driest part of the ground. Well, to be fair, I'm not sure that had anything to do with the pitch or the conditions. It's probably going to be difficult for the fielders on the outfield while it's drizzling, isn't it? Look, I don't have a problem with that. I thought they didn't come back on, which meant that it was probably raining enough that they did have to go off. The pink ball's already going to get soft. I had absolutely no problem with them coming off. I wasn't at the ground though, so maybe those at the ground would have a different view of that. But They did. If they don't go back on, like quite often we're like, oh, why are they coming off? It's like, well, they also didn't come back on. That usually means that it's probably raining too much to play cricket here.
Yeah, I again, as you say, I sort of defer to people who are at the ground, and there seems to be quite a lot of frustration, especially on ball-by-ball commentary. There are a lot of feedbackers asking, what the actual reason was for people being off. But yeah, and again, it's very easy to overlook player safety as an issue, and I think a lot of players generally support decisions like that, even when the written press and broadcasters get frustrated by it.
Harsha says, when is Steve Smith going to be dropped? Clearly not in form and a liability at number 4. We got 2 of these questions. Harsha, I think yours is tongue-in-cheek. Harsha, I hope yours is tongue-in-cheek. But there was another question as well about Steve Smith going back and finding form by being dropped to Shield cricket. It's Steve Smith, everyone. What on earth are we talking about here? As if Steve Smith's going to go back to a lower form of cricket and work things out anyway. Look, I wrote a big piece about him a couple of days. You can read about a couple of days ago on Cricinfo. You can read about it if you want and have a look at it. I think there's a lot of issues with Steve Smith. He's still averaging more than the global average over the last, 2 or 3 years. He's still obviously a fantastic player. He's in no way a liability, even if that was tongue-in-cheek.
I think they should drop him and get in one of the guys who's been playing as a ringer for one of the BBL teams. I think that's the only way to solve the problem that Australia definitely have with their batting at the moment.
We'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube, and for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app, and for premium content plus live streaming, make sure to subscribe to ESPN Player.